I raised 6 kids on this 4.5 acres, and they're all grown up now. But I thought I would tell you about some of the tips and tricks that I used as they were growing up to raise a large family. I think a lot of them still apply today and might be helpful to those of you that are still raising a large family at home. This is the cowbell that I used to ring when it was time for meals. I kept it in my kitchen and they could hear me anywhere in that 2-story house and knew it was time to eat. So I didn't have to try to find all 6 of them to come to supper. It now hangs at my cabin. My kids are now 24, 29, 33, 36, 39, and 40. And I have 13 grandchildren. And maybe raising them in the country in some ways was a little bit different. And we did live in the city maybe for a year or so with a couple of them. I say the city, a town of about 500 people. So I always said that when you have no kids and then you have one, it's a huge change to your lifestyle. And then when you have 2, again, it's a huge adjustment between 1 and 2. And when you have 3, it's a huge adjustment between 2 and managing 3. But when you have 4, 5, and 6, it's a piece of cake. You really don't do much of anything different. You just do more of it. And so today I'm going to tell you some of the tricks that I used to raise a large family. I always said whenever we would have another kid, we'll just add a little bit more water to the soup. That's an old saying, but it really is true, because I would make things that would expand. And that way, when we had it the first night, we would have the regular food. And then the next night, it would have expanded in the fridge and I would just add water and we would have that dish all over again and enough to feed everyone. Things will expand like chicken and noodles. Your noodles will expand. Chili, anything with beans in it will expand. Chicken and dumplings, because your dumplings will expand. Stews, because even your potatoes and your carrots overnight will absorb water. And chicken and rice. Those are some of the things, or just a few of the things that I would make that would expand, and then you just add water and you had enough to feed everyone a second night. So that's some of the tricks that I used to feed everyone. I also always used like fresh onion. I've never really understood the dehydrated onion or the dried onion in those little containers. You can buy so much more fresh onion and then you can just chop it and freeze it. So I stuck to things like that I knew I could get the biggest bang for my buck. And then I was always mindful of how we used our resources. Of course, they had hand-me-downs from each one, and they would pass them on when they fit until they were worn out or they needed to go to the next kid. So we would do like a little style show every year before school started. Saw what fit, saw what needed to move to the next kid's drawer, and figure out what pieces were missing for us to get by that year. And if you remember cutoffs were a big thing for us in the summer. If we had a hole in the knee of jeans or a hole in the knee of sweatpants, we cut them off and they had shorts to wear out here on the farm in the country. Now, my boys grew to be 6'3", 6'5", and 6'8". And so in the summer, they were required to wear shorts when we were at home. Now, if you've raised boys nowadays, many of them will not wear shorts. They want to wear jeans, even if it's going to be like 108 today. My boys, I can swear, wherever they are at, they're in jeans. But in the summer, I said, no. You guys are so tall that it takes up so much of the washing machine to do a load that I have to do more laundry. So you have to wear shorts in the summertime when you're at home. No one's going to see you but us, but you have to wear them because otherwise I'm doing tons more laundry because your jeans take up half a load. So those were little tricks that I did along the way. And we still do that here at home. I still wear cutoff sweats. I still wear cutoff jeans at home. Those are my work clothes. Those are my gardening clothes. Those are the things that I wear to be comfortable in when I'm not going to see anybody. And then we did a lot of little things that cost little to no money. We went camping. We would take the bicycles. They would ride around the campsite. We would take their scooter. They would ride around the campsite. We would take like scoop ball and that Velcro ball game. We had all kinds of fun little things, even croquet. And they would play that at the campsite and have a blast. We would have picnics. We would go to the park once in a while. That was a treat for them to play on the equipment at the park. And we would go to library time once in a while when they had free library reading or free library time for the kids. We took lots of walks. Sometimes they would follow me in their bikes. And we just enjoyed being outside, being at home, enjoyed our donkeys, our cats, our goats, our animals. And I think they had a really good childhood. It's similar to the one that I had growing up, and I'm still here, so it must have been good. We had lots of sharing that went on. And when you have 6 kids, they have to learn to share. I know sometimes people will buy like each of the kids the same thing for Christmas because they don't want them to fight over it. And then you have duplicates in your house. Well, we didn't do that. We would buy like one kid had a light bright and he got to play with it first. He got to play with it. And then the others would share and they would get to play with it. So we had rules where if it was yours, you got to play with it first. But if it was okay and you weren't going to play with it, you needed to let the other kids share as long as they took care of it and put it back. And it was the same way when I grew up. We had a game cabinet and we had like one game of Monopoly, one game of Scrabble, very limited, but we all shared. And none of those were mine. They were my brother's, but we all shared. And what we had, the few toys we had, went into that cabinet and we would all share them. And we didn't have any duplicates that way. We also tried to cut down it with as much waste as possible. I would recycle, reuse leftovers. If there was some leftover chili or something like that that wasn't enough for everybody, I'd mix it in the next dish and they'd never know it was there. I did that all the time. You can mix that in taco soup. You can mix it in just about anything that has hamburger and they're not going to know that it's there. So I used a lot of creative things like that to use up what I had. And if we ever did have anything that needed to be thrown out, then the outdoor cats would get that. But I tried to limit that as much as possible because every dime mattered when you had 6 kids to feed. We didn't allow any of them to participate in sports or any outside the home activities until the 4th grade. And I know kids now are in soccer. They're in everything from like kindergarten, preschool on. But we had that rule in our house because we had 2 parents and 6 kids and we lived in the country. So we couldn't get everybody where they needed to go for everything. So when they hit the 4th grade, they could go out for stuff if they wanted to. They could go out for softball, basketball, whatever they wanted to go out for. And at one point, we did have to each parent take one kid to a ball game and the coach take another, because at that time I had 3 of them that were over 4th grade that were participating. By the time my older one was able to drive, and then the next one was only a year younger and he was able to drive, it was easier to get people where they needed to go, because at that time, if you worked it right, which mine worked that way for quite a long time until I got towards the end, I always had a kid that could drive. And so that helped tremendously, picking people up from practices, running back and forth to work in the concession stand. We always had an extra driver, and that was a tremendous help. I always kept liability only on all of our vehicles because they were paid for, like I've mentioned to you before. And when you have young drivers, that really saves a lot of money, especially if they're boys, because even under 26 years old, they really raise your rates if you have a young man driving any of your vehicles, and they'll charge you on the most expensive vehicle that you own, even if he's driving the old beat up farm truck. When we went out, everybody had to stay together. If we went to a store, everybody had to stay together. When they were young, they had to hold on to the cart, hold on to hands, hold on to the stroller, hold on to hands. Nobody was allowed to go to the toy aisle by themselves. Nobody was allowed to go to the bathroom and wander off. We all went everywhere together and waited for the next person. So if there was something they wanted to see when I was done with my shopping, we would go and we would look at that. But for the most part, they really knew that they weren't to ask for a lot of stuff in between birthdays and Christmas. That's the way I was raised as well. And so we didn't get a lot of extras in between those times. Birthdays were simple and just limited to family till probably the 4th grade. And then after that, they were allowed to invite somebody to their birthday party, maybe have them spend the night. There were times that maybe they had 2 or 3 people spend the night. But we never had large, extravagant birthday parties. I always made their cake. We had cake and ice cream, and the supper that they would choose would be what I would make for their birthday meal. So I hope you've enjoyed this little look back into me raising a large family and some of the tips and tricks that I used. It's quite an adjustment when they start moving out. And that's one of my shorts that I did the other day, is don't wish your life away, because people will wish for their kids to be out of diapers, and then they'll wish for them to be toddlers, and then they'll wish for them to be in middle school or high school because they think it will get easier. Well, let me tell you, grown-up kids have grown-up problems, and you still worry about them. And you find at some point when you're raising your kids that that time does go incredibly fast. It doesn't seem like it is at the time. Sometimes it seems like they're never going to grow up and you're so overwhelmed. But once they do, it's a big adjustment. So thanks for listening today, and I hope you have a great day.